Awesome. Let's get started. Welcome, everyone. For folks who don't know, my name is Aaron. I help lead our marketing and community team here at Play Versus. You may see me on some emails or hanging out on the Discord if you're in there as well, too. Really, really excited for tonight. Should be a really great conversation and just a really great webinar overall. I definitely want to just let everyone know that we are recording right now. We will send out this recording to everyone who is RSVP to the event after the event as well, too. Please feel, like I said at the beginning, please feel free to introduce yourself and where you're calling in from in our webinar chat. We'll also be utilizing the Q&A function that we'll be using to answer questions throughout the webinar as well too. So feel free to throw any questions you have, either maybe what you're looking to learn or what you want to learn from this webinar in there as well too, and we'll make sure to get to them. But without further ado, I'm going to hand it off to Ryan Brodeur. He is our super coach and coach out of Kingswood Oxford School in Connecticut. Ryan, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Aaron. Appreciate it. So thank you so much, everybody, for coming in tonight. It's a chilly Thursday night up here in New England, bracing away from the cold. My name is Ryan Brodeur. I'm from Kingswood Oxford School here in Connecticut, Central Connecticut. So I've been a coach for a number of years, swimming, tennis, soccer, but I've been an esports coach for the last 2 years or so, as our program has kind of like gotten off the ground here at Kingswood Oxford. So tonight I'm just going to be talking about, it's interesting because it's kind of it's a topic that's kind of tough to pin down. You know, I'm not doing streaming or running Discord, something that's like very tangible. So culture and spaces essentially is what I wanted to talk about tonight. And those are two things that are not only important to esports, but to, I think, all co-curricular programs, athletics, et cetera. And I found that, you know, just as they're important in other team environments, in esports, they are just as critical. And sometimes if even more so, I think, given the unique atmosphere of esports. So today, we're just going to be first talking about some of the goals that we had as a team in a esports program at KO, and some goals that we have moving forward, just so that you kind of can put everything that I'm going to talk about tonight into the perspective of our school, and maybe hopefully it'll be things that you can kind of take away in some degree for your own schools. We're going to be looking at ways that spaces kind of create identity and give esports programs a touch point or multiple touch points if they're fortunate, not just with their own players, but also with the broader school community. And then we're just going to talk about some tangible experience pieces, and then intangible elements of team culture and how we try to build that essentially from zero, which is, you know, it's pretty tough. So here we go. So just to give you kind of an overview of where our program is and what we're doing, we kind of got off the ground really late in the summer of 2020 as a kind of like a last minute jump into Play Versus and one of their promotions. And we ran a program in the fall with a handful of kids. And then after that first kind of like a rough draft sort of year, we were fortunate enough to get some more interest and get a lot of support from not just the students, but also from our athletic department, which was fantastic. And we were folded into athletics in the fall of 2021 as a varsity program. We're single season, so we actually only play in the fall, mostly because our school is unique in that it requires our students to have a co-curricular activity, usually a sport, for each of the 3 seasons, and the Play Versus spring season doesn't quite line up with our spring. So we're just the fall, and we're looking for ways to expand that. And just to give you another context, and this may be something that you've experienced in your own coaching time, we found that esports, you know, not just because it's a new program, but just because it's esports, right? It's, for the most part, I think it's misunderstood, not in a negative way, but in a way that just people don't run into it on a daily basis, right? I mean, you have to imagine that most students, teachers, parents are probably not lurking on Reddit or going through YouTube or watching Twitch on their weekends. You know, that's where we that was the starting context, right? A program with the support of the school, but we had a community that didn't really know what to make of us yet. And so we kind of had to decide what we wanted to turn into, like who we were, right? What our purpose was. Our goals for the whole program, right? For esports at Kingswood Oxford. First and foremost, we want to make sure that we solidify the idea of esports as a team activity, right? I'll say sport just because we are part of athletics and because we incorporate fitness every day. Just like any other sports team, we are a team, and that is that's challenging, I think, for gamers, right? To hear that, like, it's not just about you, the individual, it's about you as part of a team. We also wanted to set out and replace and reframe a lot of assumptions that people have about gaming and gamers, right? Whether it's assumptions they've made based on pop culture, right? Their own personal experiences. We wanted to make sure that we kind of took control of that narrative to appropriately frame it for our community. We also wanted to make sure that we created a safe, responsible team culture. Part of that kind of like stereotype about gaming is that it can be really toxic. And I mean, unfortunately, the reality is it can be. And so, but ironically, I feel like most gamers are not that, and esports coaches, we've seen the great value and the great like equalizer that is gaming and how it can bring a lot of people together. And so we wanted to make sure that our esports program, our esports spaces, were safe, we're secure, we're responsible, right, for everybody involved. And then finally, we wanted to make sure that we established financial and cultural longevity. As educators, we all know that very often programs can rise and fall based on the passions of one or two people. But for Kingswood, we really wanted to make sure that we set something up that could withstand the test of time. That established a culture year over year that when people came in, they would realize, like, I'm part of KO Esports. I know what I'm doing. I'm proud to represent the Wyverns. I'm proud to compete with my school's logo on my back. And then we also wanted financial longevity because things break, and our school has been so gracious and so supportive in giving us financial backing to kind of make our spaces what they are and outfit our team. And that's no small feat, right? It's a tough thing to sometimes go to a school and say, I'd like to buy more video games, please, right? I'd really like to get some more Nintendos. And so we wanted to make sure that we honored that confident investment and that we kept that up as long as possible. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about is spaces, right? And for us, for me as a coach, when we kind of moved from that draft season into that first, like, we're going to do this for real, it was so important for me to have some sort of physical space, right? The football team is the football field, the soccer team is the soccer field, the baseball team is the baseball field, et cetera, right? There are locker rooms, there are in athletics, there are spaces, right, that are clearly marked out, literally painted out with lines and such, for each of those teams. And in esports, I wanted to make sure that we had some place that said, this is for the team, right? And it became something that the entire school recognized. And we were fortunate to get kind of an unused room. You see here some of the before pictures, right? This is before we kind of transformed it with a lot of sweat and a lot of investment and a lot of time. And it was just essentially an unclaimed classroom. Students would come in here and they would game at times. And it really wasn't being used for anything. And so when we made the program, it was all about, let's make this our space. Let's make this for the esports team. And as I switch away from these photos, right, this is what it looks like now, right? And these are the glamour shots. I never get sick of looking at these, but this is now a space that when kids, when teachers, when tours come through, can say, like, this is for esports, right? This is for our whole program. And it allows us to set up expectations, right? Like you walk into the space and there are clearly defined areas, right? There's like cabinets for gear, and like there's like Nintendo stations, and there are Switch stations, and each place has a purpose. And even if you don't essentially know what they are, like, or explicitly know what they are when you walk in, like, you know that there's a purpose there. And that was super duper important for me as a coach. And so what I would say is we got super lucky with this room. I still, like, I pinch myself. I can't believe we did this. But even without this room, whether it's like part of the computer lab, whether it's part of like a corner of a classroom where you set up like a Nintendo Switch, or you're setting up an Xbox or something to play Madden, right? Some sort of physical definition, like outwardly visible external indicator to the school community, to other teachers, to parents, to players, right? That says like, this is esports, is so important, so important. Because what it did is this essentially gave us, this was permanent branding, right? And you can see this at the outside of the room here, right? Like a person walks by and they know that that's esports, right? And so then they ask, well, what's that, right? And they can peek in, they can look, and they can say, hey, this is a thing, this is a real thing, right? This isn't just, some kid in the corner who's playing a video game. It is thoughtful, this is deliberate. In creating some sort of space, right? You reserve it for the team, and that's what we did. We made our practice field, we made our match field, like, this is our turf. And that helped us communicate this notion of community in the context of this program. Defining the space as esports, as Kingswood Oxford esports, also helped us start to begin the transition away from the individual gamer, right? The lone wolf. For my own part, right, I game primarily alone, right? And that's not an uncommon experience for most gamers, I would say, at least initially, right? Gaming is incredibly personal, and it's incredibly private. And so it can be really challenging to take this very private thing and have it interface with something that is communal. And so having a space for us allowed us to facilitate that transition with some cool LED lights, right? Because that gets them immediately like, whoa, look at those LEDs, like that starts them down the path of like, okay, this is like a thing. I'll say another thing that's really important about spaces, and again, it doesn't have to be a whole room. It can just be like a corner. It can be like a place where you kind of like, you're moving carts out and you're setting up some TVs, somehow like laying that out in a way that separates it from the area around it, creates an opportunity for community, right? For not just the team to come in and say, hey, this is esports, but for the school community to get to know the program in the program's through the program's eyes, I should say, like through their lenses. So for our part, we were able to begin offering weekly or monthly open gaming sessions to bring in prospective gamers, people who maybe game a lot at home, but hadn't thought about, hey, maybe I could do this as a competitive option for my high school, to bring them in to see what it's like, to bring in brand new gamers, people who never tried it before, and like, maybe I can try this out, right? Because by making it a school activity that is like clearly labeled every which way, this is for the school, it makes it feel more safe than, say, like walking up to a group of people playing on their own, and it's like a very personal thing. And so a physical space, however it manifests, I think is so critical to helping define a program, both internally and externally. The space conversation for us is like that's big picture, right? Like that's the macro level. And it's easy to kind of see that as I'm staring here at Timmy and Tommy locked behind their Nintendo dock there. There are also like a lot of smaller experiences and touch points, both again for the teammates, the team members, I should say, and also for the school community, and also for the coaches, right? That by changing them helps us to frame the experience as, again, one of the team, right? These are not my Nintendos. This is not my room. These are not their games or their controllers. This is for the school, right? And we need to preserve this for the community as a whole. And so this is one thing I think is really, if you are able to, these are some of the things that I think have made the biggest difference from my perspective as a coach, just on like a day-to-day level. So again, associating with team identity as opposed to individualism, answering the question of like, who uses this equipment, right? And the answer is the players do, right? It's not any student who wants to. It's not me on my free time. It's the players. It's just for specific activities, things that are organized and thought out. And then like, how do they use it, right? Trying to avoid just like hucking a controller into the corner or kind of slamming things around and leaving game cases all over the place, right? It sounds maybe a little bit harsh to think of it this way, but from my perspective, access is a privilege, right? It's not a right, right? In the same way that I actually view esports not necessarily as my right as a coach. It's a privilege. I'm so privileged that I get to coach such an awesome program and be involved in shaping this, right? And kind of defining that as like a thing that, you know, we need to learn how to trust one another, to earn the trust of the program, of the coaches, to show responsibility, right? Is absolutely critical. And it also, again, it preserves functionality, right? So we're not replacing controllers every 3 weeks, right? It preserves longevity. And just like athletic equipment, right? You want to take care of it, because if you don't take care of it, it makes it a lot harder for the program to sustain itself. What I'll say is, there are a few things on this that I think were the most useful for me. The first was, so you see there are locks in the cabinets there, like having everything kind of like just kind of locked up. It feels a little off-putting, and it did feel weird at first, but it gave me peace of mind, and it created an instant check-in on the part of the players and on my part, right, with each other, to say like, hey, are you ready to go? What do you need today? Right. And then we open the cabinets, and then we start the distribution, and they can help each other get in. The captains can go in, open up, and get everybody set up to play. That was so important. And again, helped to define the space. I made the joke earlier about Timmy and Tommy there for that Nintendo Switch. I found these fantastic 3D printed Nintendo docks that are adhered to the table with like the 3M adhesive tape that you use for like car bumpers. So I hope they never have to come off, because it's going to take a while. But by kind of locking those up, right, it allowed us to keep them out so that they could be used, but also, you know, prevented them from walking. Nintendos are famously portable, right? And whether intentionally or unintentionally, we wanted to make sure that they were kept in place so that they were there when we needed them, right? And the Joy-Cons are taken off and kind of left in the cabinet locked up. And then two other pieces, I think, that were so important, particularly from a Nintendo end, right? On the PC end, I will say we're primarily at this moment a Nintendo school. Most of our interest has been in Mario Kart, has been in Splatoon and Smash Brothers. We have a Rocket League team, or had a Rocket League team, and hope we're going to continue with that. League of Legends is tough. So we have some PC, and our PCs have pins on them, right? That only the coaches know, and like the IT directors know, so that they can go in and let kids in if they need to, and obviously do updates to kind of, again, get that checkpoint. Hey, coach, can we get the pin for Station 3? It's like, yeah, no sweat, let's go, right? But also on the Nintendos, if you're a Nintendo school, I highly encourage you to look at using parental controls, because it allows you to, again, to just kind of preserve that longevity, right? And so we have it set so that if the pin isn't entered, as you see there in the bottom left, the Nintendo basically shuts off after 15 minutes. I like to call them my anti-theft device, essentially. But, you know, it's again, another checkpoint of like, oh, this isn't my Switch at home. This is the school Switch, right? And I want to respect that. And so get that pin, off you go, you're off to the races. For that particular piece, what I would say is can be a little bit tricky, because Nintendo only allows you to register 3 individual Switches per an email address associated with a Nintendo account. So what I would encourage, if you have multiple Switches or beyond 3, what I'd say is I would do the +1 trick for something like Gmail or Outlook, so that you have you're getting all the same communications, the same email address, and it'll allow you to get all of them kind of linked and daisy chained together, so to speak. And then the final piece of experience that really didn't click for me until this year was the use of team accounts. And I say it didn't click for me because it's kind of an odd thing, right? Gaming progress can be so personal, right? You want to scout your opponent, you want to get out there, you want to see what that individual person does. And for games like Rocket League, for example, or League of Legends, we haven't gone to team accounts yet, though it's a thing that I'm looking at, right? Trying to have students set up a team account, at least for like the season. But for the Nintendos, what we noticed was that at the end of my first full year as a varsity program, when seniors would leave, their progress went with them. And I sat there thinking in December, like, man, all that gear we unlocked, all that progress we made, that's gone. And how much would it stink if a student had to come back in and start from scratch next year, right? And so what this year I implemented was a set of team accounts. And so for the most part, our Nintendo players compete on, and you can see it again, bottom left, where it says KO Esport 3. They're assigned a team account, right, to a specific switch. So, all right, so you're going to be playing Splatoon today on Esports 4, right? And that Esports 4 account, multiple people might go on and off that for practice, right? Or might be assigned it during a match, but that Esports 4 progress will remain with the school and remain with the team as we move forward, right? Splatoon, I'll have to say, was the one that I was most worried about because of the way that they kind of isolated progress for Splatoon 2. It's a little bit less of an issue now with Splatoon 3, actually a lot less of an issue. We still allow personal Nintendo accounts for kids who have access. So if a student is like a hardcore gamer, or they just know that they're going to play a lot at home and they want their progress to just kind of like sync over, kids can bring their personal accounts. And that allows them to access their personal progress. But I will say most of our players don't do that. A lot of our kids don't have access to Nintendos when they go home, right? Or they don't have a computer that can run Rocket League well enough. And so most of their game experience is at school. And so preserving that progress and giving them access at school is super, super important. And I found really, really, really useful. And it also, as part of kind of to refer back, and when we do our community gaming sessions, right, we have like an hour on Fridays, those team accounts allow me to put somebody on to basically a neutral system and say, you're going to play with Esports 3 today, and you're going to use their progress. And so they're not starting from scratch, and it's not, it gives them something to start with. They get a jump. All of these things, I think, these tinier experiences inside that bigger space, again, continue to define what esports is for us and for the broader community. We are a team, right? We're not a club. We're not like just a fun, hey, we've got some free time, let's go game. We are a deliberate team with practice schedules and rotations and drills and half-hour workouts, right? We have a plan, and that's for something that for me helps us build that team identity. The next piece, and it's weird because this is culture, right? And everything I talked about previously is part of culture, but I think when I'm saying culture here, I'm thinking more specifically about the intangibles, right? This is the, I like pull up my notes here, right? This is the hardest thing to encourage. It's the least tangible. It's the least visible for most folks, right? And it's the most challenging, but it's definitely the single most important part of not just of esports, but of any team, right? Setting the culture for the program. And so with that whole, like, it's invisible piece, our culture is invisible. We have, there's like Staples banners, right? A set of esports values, right? That are clearly labeled. They're in giant font. It's a little faded now, right? That are hung right at the top of the room, and they're readable from just about every corner, right? And they're connected to our school's core values. And I think in order for a culture to succeed, a group culture to succeed, they do need to be connected to your school's core values. So if you haven't thought about, what is the culture of our esports program, the first place that I would suggest looking is look at your school's mission, look at your core value statements, see what skills and personality strengths and characteristics your school is promoting, because everything you need is right there. And by keeping it visible, keeping the language simple, we made it something that we're able to, as coaches, reference all the time. right? Kids having a tough day and they're getting a little tilted about who knows what, right? And they don't want to get up. And you say like, hey, maybe you should, let's take a break. Let's go take a walk, go get some water. Like, I don't want to do this. And you're like, esports 3, look at that. I take a break and communicate when I run into challenges and disappointment. And they're like, oh, right. Because part of that value creation piece is we have our students sign just essentially a statement of understanding, right? And you see that giant orange banner. That's 4 feet by 3 feet. And it used to be a brighter orange, but when the kids come in, they sign it as like I've seen these values, we've talked about them. And basically I know that by being a part of this program, I'm promising to try to hold myself to that. And so knowing that they've been a part of that process of signing on, right? And they've done so willingly, like they might push back a little bit, like, I don't really want to sign that, right? And I've had players definitely say, like, well, I mean, it's not optional, right? This is the team, right? And if you can't do this, then the team, I think, needs to move on without you, right? And then they're like, okay, fine, and then they'll do it, and it starts to show up like in little pieces within their own conversations, because as coaches and as captains, right, we're modeling it and referencing it forever and always. It's beyond these 2 pieces of information, beyond our 2 banners, right? And I love these banners, right? Creating team culture, again, just like anything else, is intangible. And so for us, I mentioned our fitness piece. That's 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week, except for actually not I think Thursdays we had to drop off because our schedule, we draw in school so close to match time, but 5 days a week in preseason, right? We are doing full group fitness, 35-minute rotations of like a legitimate workout, and our assistant takes them out and puts the kids through their paces, and they might be upset about it, but like we do it as a team. We do small team debriefs on a regular basis, whether they want to or not. After a win or a loss, it's like, all right, you 4, you 3, let's step out in the hall. I want you to just like talk about go after what went right, what went wrong, what you noticed, and like let's talk about what we can take away from that. And encouraging that as a regular practice creates this like these little internal units of like the Smash team or the Rocket League team or the Splatoon squad, right? And by these small gestures, right? And if you've coached any other sport, you know how important this is, and you know how much effort and energy it takes to kind of build this. But by constantly referencing these, you start to build accountability within those teams, right? And you create this expectation of students will be responsible for themselves, and they're going to be responsible for others. But like I said, it's the most challenging piece, and it's so gradual, because especially for a new program, right? You're starting from zero. Sure, we have the school's core values, but we haven't really defined those in the context of esports in a way that has been around long enough so that students come in and they know it because the older kids are talking about it, right? We're still, I think we're graduating students now who have done 3 years with the program, right? And next year we're looking at students who will be on for 4, right? So it's a big deal. As the students move through and as this culture slowly begins to build, my hope is that our program will have some legs, right? And if I don't run it, or my assistant doesn't run it and hands off to somebody else, that program will continue to exist in a way that is beneficial to the school. And so, as I said, this is all from the perspective of our school, right? But I'm hoping that some elements here are things that you folks can take back to your schools, to your programs, whether they're brand spanking new or they've been around for a couple of years, right? If nothing, maybe those banners, right? Those are winners. And hopefully these will help you maybe think a little bit differently about the program and the way that it interfaces with the school. Esports is so cool, right? It's so incredibly cool because it's new, and because it's this thing that I mean, it's counterculture. Esports is counterculture to a large degree. I mean, it's getting there. It's losing its counterculture cred, I think, as you know, as the years move on. But it's an opportunity to kind of take something that seems like niche and bring it into the spotlight and help more students, more families experience the benefits of team activities, of group interactions, right, of competition, right, of winning and losing. And so hopefully you found something here that you can kind of take with you as you head out into your evening. And I'll just kind of pause here, easiest slide to make, and just see if you folks have any questions. Hey, Aaron.
Hey there. So yeah, if folks have questions, feel free to throw them in the Q&A function here. We have one question for you already, Ryan. How did you approach the athletic department and convince them that esports was a varsity program they should include?
So I will say, I had kind of an easy job of it. Our athletic director has background in gaming, and he knows firsthand how cool gaming can be and how collaborative and excellent gaming can be. And for the record, I'm still so much better than he is at Mario Kart. And because I know he might end up on this call at some point. I just want to put that out into the public sphere. He's going to destroy me. Yeah, so I will say, so we had his support pretty early on, but I think for the bigger schools perspective, it was just addressing questions that they had about like, how could this be competitive? Like, how can esports be a varsity program? Like, what does that mean? And so it's like, well, what does a varsity program look like for baseball, right? It's organized practices that are regularly scheduled, right? It's drills, it's warmups, it's scheduled matches that are like at a set time, and they've got rules and regulations. Like esports has all of that. And by committing to making all of those pieces come together in a regularly scheduled way, we've slowly been able to kind of get folks on board, both in the athletic department and overall, with the idea that esports is varsity. And I'll also say that for our school uniquely, we have one of the requirements of our varsity programs is that they have a fitness component, which I was thrilled about, right? Because esports is, people don't think athletics when they think esports, right? But you know, if you see this at pro levels, right, as fitness and health and well-being is good, not just for like reflexes, but also for mental fortitude and toughness and just general overall success, right? Saying we're going to build fitness into our program, and in doing so, take away gaming time, right? Showing that we were willing to sacrifice game time to address something that was more important for the students than for our wins and losses, I think was a big selling feature. And I will say that's been something that has been really useful when talking to parents, right? Because they'll say like, well, I don't want my son or daughter to do esports because I want them to run cross country, or like, I think that they should do this other thing. And I'll say, well, listen, we're not just sitting around gaming, right? Here are the workouts. Like, you can look at these workouts, take them home and run them. Like, you can do these and you can make these pretty tough. And so that willingness to kind of fold in these kind of atypical gaming elements into our practices helped us define esports as varsity, and has allowed us to achieve, I think, more buy-in to esports as a varsity program. It's not perfect, right? Like I said, our AD is awesome, and he has been so supportive. But like, it's still an ongoing effort to get beyond him and you know, the immediate people who interface with the team to see it for the valuable program that it is at the varsity level. But you know, I'll also say, when our Mario Kart team went to like top 8 in the Eastern region this year, that was all of a sudden people were like, well, hang on. I was like, wait, what? Your team is you're 7-1, right? You're that, like, that also was like, well, now we want to root for you. And that helped us buy it in as a varsity program. That's a long answer. I don't know. Hopefully that gets to some of it.
No, that was great. Awesome. Any other questions here for Ryan? Going once, going twice. Awesome. Well, Ryan, thank you so much for your time tonight. I hope everyone learned a little bit of some valuable information here about how to run a really successful program. Like I mentioned up top, we will send out shortly after a recap of this with our recording. Also, we'll share a PDF version of Ryan's deck as well too, so folks can reference it as well. Oh, we have a question coming in. Melanie asks, how many adults help run your program?
So we have 2 adults, right? I was alone for my first year. And then this year I was able to bring an assistant coach on board. And that was so incredibly helpful. So we have 2 adults, but beyond that, we also have like our training staff, right? When kids get injured, whether it's through fitness or they've just been like a neck twinge or something, we're involving the training staff, athletics, the AD, et cetera, our equipment manager. So 2 initially in the team itself, and then I think probably like 3 to 4 others beyond that.
Awesome. Last call. Last call. Awesome. I was read this out to the group. Is there a stipend and support final ally from the district? What budgets do you use?
So yeah, so that's a great question.
Financially,
I should actually, you know what, I probably should have said this up at the front of the presentation, and that's unfortunately that's my miss. So we're actually an independent school, so we don't get district support. There is a coaching stipend involved, yeah, and that comes out of that's part of like the faculty expectations. Part of our job responsibilities. Every faculty member needs to coach at least one sport. And there's a financial benefit to that. And then as far as our budgets, we kind of, it's really interesting. We kind of like bounce in between 2. So our athletics department supports us with like registration, and they'll help us. Like we have a fall tournament that we run, and they help us run elements of that and pay for stuff in that end. But we also get support from our technology department. They will, especially when it comes to big tech purchases, we get some support from them as well. So we go through a few different hoops and involve a few different folks to kind of help fund the program. Yeah, good question.
awesome. One more time. Any last questions for folks? Awesome. Thank you, Bridget. Thanks for hopping in. Great. Well, with that, I will let everyone go to enjoy their Thursday evening. Thank you again, and good luck to everyone this season.
Good luck, everybody. Thanks.